I want everyone to take a second, close your eyes if it's helpful for you, and think about the problem that you have in your life that it would take a community of people to solve. So this could be a very large social problem. This could be a rule in your dorm that you don't like, or a traffic light you'd want to put in your community. So think about that problem that you would need a community to solve. Okay, keep that in your mind. We're going to come back to that. So I'm going to talk about the first problem that I helped a community solve, and that was I was an undergraduate at Xavier University in Cincinnati, and I was not thinking about the internet and technology and all of that very much. But I was really fascinated and pretty obsessed with the concept of community organizing and how you could mobilize a community to take action and solve their problems at a grassroots level. And so my first, or a summer internship during college was I stayed in Cincinnati and I went door to door in a neighborhood I didn't know at all. And my job was to simply ask people, what do you like about your neighborhood and what don't you like? Or if you could change something, what would you change? And I was listening, and I was taking notes, and I was writing down answers. And after a couple weeks of doing this, I heard 6 different people tell me that if they could solve one problem in their neighborhood, they would add a speed bump to their kind of main neighborhood road because they had kids that played in the yard, and people drove there too fast. And that was a pretty simple problem, but they thought they were the only ones thinking about this, and they didn't really know what steps they needed to take to get that speed bump put onto the street. So I, being a 20-year-old community organizer, called those 6 people, introduced them to each other. We got together in a room. We brainstormed about how we'd solve that problem. It's pretty simple. Make a presentation to their local city council and see if we could get the speed bump put in on their kind of main neighborhood drag. And after a couple months, we did that. These 6 people soliciting the help of a couple other people in their community, and this random organizer got a speed bump put in, and the #1 problem that these people had identified in their neighborhood was solved. So that, believe it or not, completely fired me up. I was so passionate about the idea that people coming together with the same idea could actually make change happen in their community. They could actually make a difference. Fast forward about 2 years for me, I was really lucky because the problem I was really passionate about solving was electing Barack Obama, who at that point in 2007, no one knew, no one really thought he had a chance at winning the primary, much less making it to the White House. But I was really passionate about this guy because when Barack Obama was in college, he did what I did. He was a community organizer on the south side of Chicago. And the idea that a community organizer could be in the White House was so inspiring to me. And so when I had the opportunity in August of 2007, I moved to South Carolina and started organizing there, doing a lot of the same work that I was doing in Cincinnati, but now with a goal that I had on my agenda. We wanted to elect this guy. We won South Carolina, we moved on in the primary, and I went to 8 different states as an organizer. Wasn't thinking as much about the online engagement at this point, was thinking about organizing in specific communities. And I remember showing up in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. I was the organizer there. I had about 3 weeks to turn this county out so Barack Obama would win on February 10th. And I thought, how the heck am I going to do this? I don't know anybody here. I have no tools. I have no idea how I'm gonna do this, and I don't have time to go door to door like I did in Cincinnati to find these people. So what am I gonna do? So we went online to a system that we had in 2008 called MyBo. Has anybody heard of MyBo? Great, young audience, love it. A system we had called MyBo, where people could find other people in their area who also cared about Barack Obama and start working to further his campaign before there were staff like me on the ground to help. And this system wasn't perfect. Now it's really pretty ancient in terms of the technology that it had and how it was useful or not useful to the campaign. But the point was, at that moment, it was the most valuable asset that I had because there were these people who had organized themselves, who had done what in 2005 or 6, I had to go door to door to help people come out into their neighborhoods and figure out how to take action. They had self-organized. And this was the first time for me that I really saw the power of building community for a purpose, for a goal online. I was so intrigued by this. So went through 2008, great, we won. I was happy about that, I hope you were too. And moved on, and I continued to work for the president through 2010. And in 2010, I made a decision to switch from the more traditional field work that I had been doing into the online organizing space. And when I say that, a lot of people say, how were you trained to do that? Like, how did you know what to do? You never worked in the online space before. How did you just make that switch? Well, the truth is it was super easy because I had just spent 5 years organizing. And what I was going to do really wasn't that much different. It was just people. It was a community of people that existed online that we already knew cared about us and cared about the work that we were doing. And all we had to do was build a relationship with them. And so to me, this felt very obvious. We're just organizing. Online or offline, we're just organizing. And what I didn't know at that time is how difficult bridging that gap, bridging those two worlds, can really be, both in people's minds and how they think about engaging offline and engaging online, but also in the tools that we have and the technology we had available at that point and still in a lot of ways are still struggling to discover and create today. But to me, the ideas were instinctual. And so I continued in that space, worked for the president in 2012 as his online organizing director. And I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about some of the key principles that I and my team really used in thinking about and trying to further online engagement every day. And then we'll spend a few minutes talking about where we go from here. But 3 key things, and the first one that I already mentioned, but when you're organizing online, you're organizing. You're building relationships with people. And that means there's a person on the other end of the emails that you send. There's a person on the other end of your social networks. There's a person on the other end of the dollars that you receive or the signups that you get. And that sounds basic, but it's such an easy thing to forget when you're in the day-to-day of kind of getting things out the door. So you're communicating with people. And we saw evidence that when we thought like this, it worked all the time. One really great example of this is when we, as the campaign, sent emails, we would test a zillion subject lines for which one worked the best, which one inspired the most action. And very often we found that the subject lines that inspired the most action were the very casual ones. How many people remember getting an email from the president with the subject line, "Hey"? Okay, sorry for all the emails. Not really. Thank you for all the action. And that subject line, "Hey," I hear about all the time. Everybody remembers that subject line, "Hey." And it makes sense, right? We were treating our list like people. We were just engaging in a conversation. And people responded to that. People took action. That made a difference. That resonated with people. So that's principle 1. The second principle that I want to talk through for a second is meeting people where they are. And I have 2 examples of this, 2 quick stories to tell that I really love. One is we had a platform on the campaign called Dashboard. And the goal of Dashboard was if people came and said they wanted to get involved in the campaign online, we could connect them with the action happening in their local community. And we could pull them in and engage them quickly. So one of my favorite stories is there was a woman who lived in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. She had never been involved in politics before, but she was really angry about the statements that Romney made about women. And so she decided that was enough. She needed to get involved, and she didn't quite know how to do it. So she went on BarackObama.com, and she signed up on Dashboard. She saw the faces of the other people in her community who were organizing. And she started to peek around, started to take action, saw the events that were coming up in her area, started to learn a little bit more. And she, within 24 hours, the local organizer in her community saw that she had joined their online community, got her phone number, gave her a call and said, hey, saw that you signed up for this event. Come on into the office. I'd love to get to know you a little more. Within a couple weeks, this woman was a core volunteer leader for us. She was bringing other people into the process. She was the person following up when a new person came on dashboard in her community. And I think it's such an amazing example of having this local presence and meeting this woman right where she was to be able to kind of pull her on board. It made the difference. And as a result, she played a really key role in our Ohio organization. The second example that I have is actually referencing Reddit, which is a platform we've heard about today. The president, some of you may remember this, but the president did a session on Reddit and had a conversation with the members of that community. And that's something that at least a national candidate hadn't done before. But we did it because we knew we needed those people. We knew that we needed to engage that community, and we knew that a decent chunk of them were not coming to BarackObama.com. They weren't self-selecting, but that they probably agreed with where the president stood. And so we took a risk, which that is a risky place to be. I love Reddit personally, but if you're the president, I mean, it's a little bit of a different thing, right? So, but he did this. He sat at a computer and typed the answers, or typed his responses to people. He was personally involved. And he posted a link to our voter registration site during that conversation. And we registered 30,000 new voters off of Reddit in that 1 hour that he was there, which was the highest spike that we saw until the very, very end of our voter registration period. So just a reminder for me as an organizer that meeting people where they are is so important. We were never going to find those people on BarackObama.com. We were going to find them on Reddit. So that's the second principle. And then the third principle is remembering that if you are an organization or if you have an agenda, you are probably not the best messenger for the people that you don't have already. Their friends probably are. And we know this, right? We talk about the need for social engagement and for people to use their networks all the time. But this was such an important thing for us, and I think we were really able to prove through some of the technology that we developed on the campaign side that this really worked. And the best example of this is our targeted sharing app, which some of you may or may not have interacted with. But essentially, this was where we told our people which of their friends on Facebook they should send a message to. And here's the reason we did this. We learned that 99% of the United States was friends with somebody who was friends of Barack Obama on Facebook. So that meant that if everyone shared, we could literally reach the whole country. But even more importantly, we saw that a section of the vote that we really needed, our young voters, we couldn't reach almost half of them on the phone. And the reason is, this is mostly you. You move all the time, you don't have landlines, we don't know your phone numbers, and you don't pick up your cell phones if you don't know the number, right? All right, fine, I do the same thing, I get it. But we could find you online. And we learned that of the 45% of people we couldn't reach on the phone, we could reach 85% of them through their friends on Facebook. And when we encouraged people to do that sharing, it worked. And they pulled more people into the process. We saw signups off of that. We saw new people entering kind of our online orbit. It wouldn't have been the same if the campaign had asked people to do that. It came from their friends as the messenger, and using the power of the community that we had built online was key to reaching the biggest chunk of the electorate that we could. So those are kind of the three big principles that I think apply across the board. Two things I just want to touch on before leaving you here. One, I think that the question about technology and civic engagement is an incredibly, incredibly important one. It's a conversation that we have around electoral politics all the time. But there are fewer resources and less energy behind that when you're not talking about an election day. When you're talking about governing, or when you're talking about the speed bumps that people want in their communities. There are a couple organizations doing this and doing a great job of it. Code for America, Google's doing some great stuff around it. OpenGov here in Chicago. Chicago has a lot of great stuff happening around this. But we aren't doing enough. And it's incredibly, incredibly important. Change doesn't happen when somebody gets elected. Change happens as they're governing. And so the power that we have in engaging people in a civic conversation and a community building, civic community building place outside of an electoral context, it's a challenge for us, and it's a place we have a lot of space to grow in. So I really encourage you guys to think about that. Go back to the problem that you imagined at the beginning. How many people imagined a local problem, like that affects you day to day? Raise your hand. I can kind of see. Okay. Okay, so a lot of you did. How many people imagined a big problem that's hard to solve and is going to take a ton of people, like a national problem? Okay. Or a global problem, all that. Okay. All right, so it's a pretty good split. So the thing I would say is this. The internet is not, it's a holy grail in some ways, but the internet is not a holy grail, just like for me making the jump from being an offline organizer to an online organizer really wasn't that hard. This is a tool for you. And the problems that you want to solve, whether it's a speed bump in your community or it's it's world hunger, the pieces of that puzzle in the community, you're going to be able to mobilize around that. They are online, and the tools are there for us to do it. So just think of it as building relationships with people. That's the best suggestion I can give on it. And building community the same way you would in a classroom, at a coffee shop, at a happy hour, or anywhere else. And then the last thing I would say is, based on my own story, I love being in the internet and technology space. It's not a space I ever would have imagined myself, but it's an incredibly important space to be. And we need people in this space, in civic engagement, in politics. So if you're thinking about it, it's not that intimidating, it's not that scary, and it's a great world to be in. Particularly if you're a woman and you're thinking about it, we really need you. So step up and join the team. Thank you.